It's a pleasure to greet you at the second of 3 decision briefings on the budget. For those who are in attendance or listening in for the first time, please go to the town's YouTube channel and listen to the meeting from yesterday, where I gave a more complete explanation of this process and also an overview and important context about the town's past use of short-term and long-term debt. In brief, I came into office in an election that represented change. And since that time, I have continued to hear from residents that they need to see that practices have changed, and particularly with regard to the town's finances. I agree. You are watching us approach the budget process in a different way than has been done in the past. We are basing our numbers on a 5-year analysis of actual expenditures and revenue. So this is not a rollover budget where numbers are merely adjusted from last year. Instead, it is intended to be a rebuild. Also, we are using a convention or conventions borrowed from the military, such as decision briefing and COAs or courses of action, so that we have a fundamental decision still on the table in front of the town board to consider. Rather than presenting you with a fully baked finished product, our goal is to build a better, more thoughtful budget that is also more public, transparent, and easier to understand. As was explained yesterday, this is not a public hearing with public comment. We will exclusively be doing work at this briefing decision. Members of the public will be invited to attend and address the town board at the October 25th public hearing on the budget, where the preliminary budget will be discussed. The final vote will take place on November 17th. So again, there's no public comment today. The work done in the briefings contributes to the preliminary budget, which will be issued before the next town board meeting and the public hearing, which are both held on October 25th. And then the vote for the final budget is at the town board meeting on November 17th. And now I'll turn the floor over to our comptroller, Beth Greenwood.
Okay, and just to recap from yesterday, the way we're doing this, we've sat with each of the department heads to come up with the recommended numbers that our department gave to the department heads, portioned out into their sections of it. Then we met with each of the department heads and kind of worked through the numbers that we thought made sense based on what their priorities were and what they needed to do differently or one way or another for next year. So some of the numbers got tweaked up or down a little bit based on those conversations to give us what we started with for this budget. So as we sit with each of the department heads, what we're doing is just kind of having them talk about what they've done this year, what they're hoping to do in the next year, and then I'll talk to budget specifics that kind of support their intentions. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Peretti, Coordinator of Community Programs, and I'm going to first start with my 2022 highlights as of yet. This year, well, as you know, at the end of last year, we lost an employee. So this year I was short-staffed, but there was no interruption of services. I took that as a positive and brought in an intern to work with me over the summer for the busy periods, because I know in the fall and the winter it slows down a little. So it actually kind of worked to my advantage. Luckily, the girls at the senior center stepped up, took on added responsibilities, did an amazing job, and everything over there is running amazingly. So I thought this year that was a positive for something that wasn't a very good start. I also developed a universal application. This was used for all of our summer hires for not just the pool, but for recreation, anything that had to do with seasonal work. Also, I developed a facilities use manual. This was used to standardize field rentals and will also help when we're aid when we are renegotiating contracts with our sports clubs. So everything would be fair and everyone knows if you want to rent a certain field, how much it's going to cost. I also worked in collaboration with Supervisor Puccioni on an OCFC grant for $25,000 with Assemblyman Steck. And other grants that I received this year was a $1,500 SIP grant, which helps to fund our concerts outside, and a $6,000 Niskayuna Community Foundation grant, which helped to offset the cost of the fencing for the small dog park, which I think is being installed. Very excited. Registrations to date for 2022 are 2,300 plus, but that does not include free events like our bunny parade or our concerts or anything where we've also serviced residents. The senior center has expanded their offerings with their exercise programs and art classes and weathered the storm of COVID, and I think they came back better than they were to start. So I'm very proud of them. My goals for 2023 was to keep looking at my programs and offerings and keeping everything fresh. If something I think has run its course, get rid of it and start and fill it in with something new. And this has been my goal since I've been here for the past 13 years, and I continue to do so. And then, I don't know, do we go line by line with the budget like we have in the past, or just go
We've
over?
just been kind of hitting highlights
Okay.
and then taking any questions.
You got it. Okay. The one thing I did want to bring, the big thing is the pool. Chlorine took a hit on our budget this year. Nothing that we could control. And I'm hoping that next year, well, in this current budget, I'm going to have to look at fees for entrance rates to the pool to kind of close the gap a little. And also we had increased the rate of pay for our lifeguards to bring them up to where all area lifeguards were so we could be competitive. And I will say, oh, I'm sorry, John, 11. And because we did do that, we raised the pay to make it competitive. We were full staffed and never skipped a beat. Never lost anyone, never had to beg for lifeguards. It was kind of a great year at the pool this year.
So speaking of that, Lori, so that's in the pool, town pool, the first line for personnel services. We were at 50, then it went to 48, and now we're going to 65.
Right.
So, and I can speak to this a little bit. So the 48 was what had been budgeted for this year. We actually did spend more than that this year, just because with having the more standardized pay scales that Lori had developed with across all of the different recreation positions, having those standardized and having those lifeguarding positions competitive with like the other municipalities and the JCC and whatnot. We were actually able to hire lifeguards, which this year was a lot of places were very short staffed. So we were really excited about that. But because of that, we've increased that budget line going forward in order to account for the fact that we were paying a more competitive wage for those positions.
Okay, thank you.
Know if there's really anything else.
Do we know what we spent this year instead of 48? Do we have that number?
We do, but we can't get that right now because our
Okay.
computer system is not supporting us. My apologies. I can get that for you though.
Is that close to 65? Is that where we're getting?
65 will take care of that. Yes.
It was 63.
Yeah.
63?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
Other than that, my budget pretty much stays the same. My contractual are on page 12. My youth rec programs, they're all revenue dependent. So they've been increasing in popularity, but we also receive the revenue on the other end of it. So we never lose money on those programs. If anything, we make a little money.
Sometimes we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where is the loss of the employee salary reflected, or is it reflected in yours? Did you hire somebody to replace that person? I know you mentioned that you had an intern.
Yeah, she came in, she's in, I'm trying to figure out where she fits into,
But that would have been a much less cost, right?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, hold on one second, I can tell you where we spent so far. 1 minute. So being this line,
I think she's allocated, isn't she?
she may be.
I think she's.
I don't have that number right now, John, I can get it for you.
Yeah, that's another
Okay.
one we can get.
It was a considerable savings because she was only here from June until September.
Mhm.
And normally we had someone full-time.
Yeah, so that'll be a considerable savings again in 2023.
Absolutely. And I've already spoken with Binghamton where she came from, and they've got me on their list to send me some applicants for next year.
Okay.
It was just a nice fit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. But I just don't, So that obviously it's not, the public swim, that's just for the pool. The 65 is just for the pool.
Absolutely.
So wherever that number would be, it would come off of what your employee salaries were, but probably spent a portion of it in other areas, I'd imagine, right?
So the salary lines are all out of the 1,000 lines, and most of those are somewhat allocated, especially the intern got allocated across different parts of that programming. If you recall, towards the beginning of this year, because she had the loss of the one employee, and we had the ladies who work at the senior center taking on additional responsibilities, they had received a raise this year. So they did take up a portion of that salary, and then a portion of it went to the intern. It was still a little bit under what a full-time person would be. So it mostly balanced out, but so for next year, that reflects accordingly.
Thank you.
Forminski, yeah. She also jumped in. We had lost a supervisor at Blatnick Park. And because she used to be a supervisor for the playground program, she jumped in and helped. So she would work there in the morning and come over and work for us in the afternoon. It was a great fit. She was amazing. Yeah.
Lori, the employee that you lost last year was a part-time employee, correct?
Part-time, but year-round.
Okay.
Yes.
In the event that we're not able to find an intern this year, is that position still funded? If needed?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes, I will need somebody to help fill in, but I think it was kind of a nice balance.
Yeah. But as long as that position is still funded in case we need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so she was allocated across 3 different lines, the intern was, so that's what.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
Beth, looking at the community center, it'd probably be the 4155 building maintenance. Are we taking into consideration improvements that are needed at the senior center? Or has that not been taken into consideration yet?
We did, I know we increased that line a bit. No. So yeah, the building maintenance line, we did add some to that based
Okay.
on the increased maintenance needs we've seen with the deterioration of the building.
Right.
That is something that I think the board is going to have to start seriously considering, because that building, they've been basically patching that up for a while now, and I don't know how long we can keep patching before we have to do something that's considerably more expensive.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
So are we just continuing on with all of your
Did you want me to go line by
categories?
line?
Oh, I don't know.
I'd be happy to.
I mean,
Why don't
because
I
you
go
cover
over-
quite a few pages. It's
Yeah,
not,
let me go over
yours is a little different than other department
Got
heads,
it.
right? You're on quite a few different pages.
Okay,
We've
so
got the pool, but then we
Start at
go,
11 and work our way down.
Yeah, so I'll start on page 11. Town pool, we already covered that. Chlorine we took a huge hit, and our, and our employees. The swim team, we took a little bit off of that, and I'm also going to increase the fee next year to join it. Driving range had a great year. We did increase a little for the personal services line because we do have one designated employee who was overseeing all the staff. He was making $20 an hour, but everybody else was making 10, the ones that were picking up the balls. But he did a wonderful job. Fall soccer, there's a little bit of a decrease in personal services. So we went down in that. Spring soccer, just down a touch for personal services. The youth recreation playground program went down a bit, and I will tell you that we were actually made money this year in the playground program for all the services that we provided. It was really nice to see. It was very well attended, and we also had a couple of weeks where we had wait lists, which was the first ever.
but your services line, personal services line went down quite a bit there. That's really where the savings is there. Is that more reflective of our actual costs there? Because it was 62 budgeted, and that was too high.
It was.
Okay.
And I think I already touched on the youth rec contractual programs. They went up a bit, but it's due to the popularity of all these programs. We're just trying to keep real with what we've had as of this year.
The miscellaneous line below that, other youth programs miscellaneous, was 11, and now we went to 26.
What that does is a lot of these programs have been broken out. That captures a bunch of new programs that we had, was rowing, frisbee. Then there's a couple other ones that are lumped into that. They don't have their own categories. They were brand new as of this year, and that's why if we carry them forward, we're going to need some extra money. But we get the money back in.
Right, it'll be reflected in the revenue side.
Absolutely,
For
absolutely.
the fees.
Yep.
All of these numbers, Lori, are based on revenue, right?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yep. On page 13, I'm jumping to community events. Miscellaneous contractual is for Niskaday, I believe, for Niskaday. And then on, and the Bunny Parade and the Halloween Parade, any little miscellaneous events that we have. And then the Fall Fun Run has stayed the same. For senior recreation, there have been just a few changes, one of which is equipment and capital outlay. We had not used it in a while, so we brought it down to 0. And also the vehicle and maintenance, due to the fact that we have a brand new vehicle, we didn't have to have such a large amount in that line. And other than that, everything stayed the same. And adult recreation was brought down a little bit by $200. Cover revenues in this meeting?
No.
No? Okay. Does anyone
And
have-
that's where you see the difference in the allocated salaries across some of those, where the personal services have come down a little bit.
The senior recreation personal services, there's a full-time and a part-time, and that's on page 13.
I'm the full-time.
You're the full-time.
Yeah, so part of my salary goes to senior and then part to community programs.
All right, and then how many part-time? Does that include everybody in the senior center, and that includes all of the part-time in the community recreation, or no?
No, just the people that are over at the center.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I answer any more questions?
All right.
We're good?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we got our last question though,
Go for it.
One more?
if you watched any of the others. So you being the department head,
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this in the past, but we've always asked, this budget and the figures that are in this budget, do they adequately fund your department for the upcoming year?
I think they do.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beth did a wonderful job. You do. You're welcome. No, I think they do. With respect to the fact that we may need to look at the community center, it needs a lot of work. But other than that, everything else I think looks great.
I think I was hoping you could speak to the senior recreation part-time shift in salary. It looks like previous years, it was at 80,530. Then this year it jumped to 89,310. We are keeping it the same. Does that have something to do with the shift in the part-time, someone leaving? Yeah.
So, yeah, we kept I wasn't sure whether we were looking to rehire that part-time position. We kept it funded. So we left that alone. We had used part of that this year for the intern position. I wasn't sure if the board's intention was to rehire somebody part-time there or to stick with the intern. So we left that funded as though it were still the part-time position to give the flexibility.
Because I understand the senior center has taken on a new program, which, may require some more time.
Absolutely.
So it sounds as though with this additional funding, it could help if that program really takes off and we need some additional support.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, because that program itself could take up a lot of time that these girls, they're already maxed out as it is. and it would be very helpful.
And that, can you just talk about that program a little bit?
Oh,
so
sure.
Everyone understands what
You got it.
we know
what we're talking, right?
we know what we're talking about.
It's called Niski at Home. So what happens is we're seeing that there are a number of individuals, not just seniors in our community, that are in need of help, volunteer help, whether it be helping with gardening or house cleaning or dog walking or what have you. So Niski at Home was born from that. And we're hoping to have volunteers and residents meet so they can get together and help each other out. But it's required a lot of work, a lot of phone calls, a lot of vetting of volunteers, more than I think these girls have to give at this point. So having a helper would be huge.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's long overdue, and our community really needs it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We all set?
We are all set. I
Thank
don't,
you so much.
no other questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lori.
Hello, my name is Laura Robertson, and I am the department head for the planning and building departments. I also oversee the planning board, zoning board of appeals, conservation advisory council, tree council, complete streets committee, climate smart communities task force, architectural review board, and most recently, the 2023 comprehensive plan committee for the town. It is an exciting and busy position. There is always a long list of things to do. I am lucky enough to be surrounded by a dedicated and highly capable staff that makes everything we accomplish possible. And every day, I am humbled and amazed by our tireless boards and committee volunteers working nights and weekends on their own time to try and make their hometown a better place. I am very thankful for all the amazing people that work and volunteer at the town. Some of the highlights in a successful 2022 so far include being a premier community in our region to implement the new New York State Stretch Energy Code. We had a lot of other towns calling us, asking us how it was going. My guys, the building inspectors, did a fantastic job training on the new code and helping our developers learn and adapt to its requirements. Saves greenhouse gas emissions on new structures built in the town of Niskuna, and it also sets a good standard for our surrounding communities to look up to. The Tree Council pulled off its most successful Arbor Day this year at the town green. We had a lot of vendors, a lot of flowers, and a tree giveaway of 300 plus trees. We had no leftover. So 300 plus trees out in the world. We also worked very hard to get timeline information out to people concerned about the health of their oak trees this summer with the spongy moth defoliation that took place. We had a DEC forester come speak to residents and answer all their questions, and we are continuing to follow up with anybody who is worried about next year. The Climate Smart Communities Task Force launched an extremely successful community solar campaign. I think Niskuna completed that campaign faster than any community that I know of in the entirety of New York State. And which residents are still eligible to enroll in if they wish. And because Niskuna was so successful with that campaign, we secured a $5,000 grant from NYSERDA, which we are using for the LED lights in one of our parks, which the highway department is doing most of the work on that. Just for anybody who doesn't remember, that was a 10% discount on your energy bill and a $200 gift certificate for anybody who enrolled. And I know that a lot of people took advantage of it, so that's great. And Climate Smart also secured a $50,000 grant from DEC to update the greenhouse gas inventories and create a government action plan to reduce climate change impacts in Niskuna, which we are still working on. Conservation Advisory Council was very happy to see their hard work on the low-mow initiatives in Blatnick Park come to fruition this year with the help of the town board and the highway department. Thank you very much, Bill and Ray. We were very thankful for the support and happy to report that these areas were monitored this summer. We received reports from those that care very much about them that the birds that they were trying to protect did in fact live there this year, and also reports of good, butterfly and bug habitat. And Ray installed the sign, so that just went very well. We're very happy, and hopefully we'll continue that into next year. The CAC also finished the first phase of a natural resources inventory, in a large part because of the hard work of Ashok Ramasubramanian. He headed up this task force and secured a grant from the Niskayuna Community Foundation. The NRI is a process of cataloging public and private open space that is critical to protecting and preserving the last remaining natural resources left in our town. It's a cause that is very near and dear to the hearts of many residents in the town of Niskayuna. Just come to a planning board. Complete Streets has been very active in planning board reviews this year. I am very happy with some of the easements that they identified as being needed during some subdivisions that we looked at. So they have been able to ensure future multi-use path connections throughout our town in some really key places. They've been a pretty critical player to some of our planning projects. They also helped ensure the Kelts Farm multi-use path was successfully connected to Blatnick Park this year. And they helped with the construction project that is on for potential award this upcoming town board meeting, the crosswalks at St. Joseph Drive and the Upper Union Street project. It's been something they've been working on for years. As I mentioned in our meeting this morning, they even did counts, I think in the rain, in the cold, over on St. Joseph crosswalk to make sure that the county would approve that, because that took a long time. Both the planning board and zoning board had a few light agendas this year, but the majority of them were very long and had a lot of agenda items that took a lot of time and thoroughness to get through. Again, the time and dedication they take for reviewing these projects is just amazing. Some of their bigger projects this year included a new GE research building, setting up a Chase Bank ATM at ShopRite Plaza, the Starbucks improvements, the Glen Eddy improvements, working through Broken Inn's temporary outdoor seating, the Kelts Farms final subdivision approval. You've probably seen the road going in and some of the houses going up over there. More recently, welcoming Momentum to Niskayuna. They've also been working with Metroplex to continue to welcome new businesses in the town, including Burlington Coat Factory this spring and Five Below this fall. Amador Homes has been very busy building homes in Harmon Grove subdivision, and the Knott's Landing West building successfully opened its apartments to the public this year. Another huge accomplishment was the conversion of the Aqueduct Animal Hospital on Balltown Road to a renovated apartment building with reduced curb cuts on Balltown Road and increased landscaping and green space. It really looks great. Also saves a lot
He's
of.
still landscaping there, I noticed. He put some nice arborvitae's up where the cars are parked.
So
and-
he's a shining example of some of his trees died and he replaced them, which is great because, you know, it's hard after approval has gone through to make them stick to their approvals. And he did that on his own.
It's a big turnaround there, aesthetically and traffic-wise.
Mhm.
Not having the mayhem, you know, with people pulling out of there, the parking lot makes a lot more sense.
And it has vastly reduced the number of barking complaints in the neighborhood. Yes, it has.
Sorry to interrupt, Laura.
The planning department and building department worked very closely with Rivers Ledge this year. They also opened their apartments up for rent in mid-2022. This was the culmination of several years of planning and utility and construction. And I encourage any of you who haven't driven out that way to take a spin and take a look at what the new apartments look like along the river. They are about halfway full right now, with more units finishing up each day. I spend a lot of time in that park working on the development of the paths and pavilions. We have successfully paved a public path along the river with lookouts built to the river and installed 2 public pavilions. Next year, we hope to finalize the landscaping and add picnic tables and more seating in the area.
So, Laura, that's where the Aqueduct Park is, and the paving, what extends from where the docks are to,
So, right, currently it extends from where the docks are all the way parallel to the river to the end of the Rivers Ledge projects. By next year, there will also be a public multi-use path that connects up to the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail. So that's all privately paid for and developed, but they will be installing that towards the completion of their apartment buildings with a lot of landscaping along that side that goes to the power lines. So along the power lines, you'll see another multi-use public trail that goes in.
excellent.
And I'm happy to report the River Road softball grant was finished this year, with the finance department helping to receive the final reimbursement on that grant. I submitted and received reimbursement to close out 2 of the Aqueduct Park grants. That was $150,000 from Canal Corps to finish the bathrooms and $44,500 from DEC for new docks. Still working on trying to get that path paved because it erodes every time we get a really big storm. Ray's probably listening, but we haven't done that yet. So I'm happy to share with you that this budget builds on the work we are doing in 2022 and sets new goals for 2023. In addition to streamlining some of our spending, we are also planning for the future of the building and planning departments by prioritizing staffing and recognizing the unique abilities of our staff. One of the things that in 2023, we are looking forward to partnering with the Schenectady Land Bank to work on more aggressively turning over zombie homes and reducing their blight in the town of Niskayuna. We are also targeting more clean energy community initiatives to reduce energy costs and bring in more grants to the town from NYSERDA. We are starting to build the Niskayuna Comprehensive Plan for 2023, and I expect that will take a lot of time. And we will be very busy collecting public input and creating an updated vision to guide the community in the next decade. My goals for my department are to continue a high level of service to the public with responsive, courteous permitting, planning, and code enforcement. I want to continue to work on streamlining application and processing forms. My goals for my staff and my department are always to be transparent and fair in our workings. And my goal for both this town and my home and the planet is to make sustainability a goal, both internally and externally in the town of Niskayuna. So, anybody has any questions on that? My budgets are actually pretty simple. My first one is on page 8. It's the building department budget. It's 3620 safety inspection. There aren't a lot of changes because of COVID. My building inspectors are able to take some more remote training, which tends to be cheaper.
What page, Laura?
8, 3620 safety inspection, yeah.
So there is quite an increase in the personal services line
Yeah.
for that. So why don't you speak to that, please?
I can speak to that. We have added another part-time building inspector position into that funding line based on some conversations that we were looking at potentially adding that position to the department.
So speak to that. Why is it necessary for us to have another part-time, another building inspector? We have 2 right now, correct?
So this is my recommendation after speaking with my building inspectors. Both of them will be eligible for retirement next year. One is eligible now. The building inspector field right now is very difficult to fill. It's not a field that attracts a large amount of people to it. It's a tough job. And I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of job churning machines out there creating building inspectors, code enforcement officers. It's something that towns and the state is struggling with to attract. And
There's a lot of education that goes into it.
there's a
and
lot
of continuing
yeah. And I mean,
education.
the reason that my training budget is so large is they've got to do 24 or 36 hours a year of training, and some of it's very specialized. So one of the things we talked about is we have a succession plan for the possible retirement of our building inspectors. There's enough work with the zombie homes and the property maintenance enforcement that we can certainly take on a part-time building inspector, get them certified, get them trained to be doing the things that the building inspectors do, and they can take on, that additional workload with the understanding that potentially we may lose a building inspector in a year or 2, and we'll have that ability to be able to just slide somebody in, hopefully, would be the idea there. Proactively.
Do you think you'll be able to find someone to do the job part-time?
I don't know. It's something that we would try. The other thing that does happen, which, Matt can attest to, is that we train them up and then they leave us. So, but I think that it's worth trying to do something. So we certainly have the workload to be able to spread a little bit more out, knowing that, our guys have put in over 25, 30 years of service. in a tough job. I'm not sure how much longer that they will go. So
I receive calls and emails every week that require building inspectors
Mm.
to visit locations in town. And with our partnership with the Land Bank Authority in really trying to address blighted properties in town is also another justification for adding this position. I also think it's been, I don't know, over a year that the water department has looked for a junior engineer, and I anticipate it will take quite a while to fill. So I think succession planning is important. And certainly there's a need from our residents, again, emails and calls every week that require building inspectors involvement. So,
yeah, the list isn't getting any shorter either.
mm-mm.
Every
Like,
week, every day.
We get,
Mhm.
you know, I'm, the planning board was very split, but in generally speaking, I think the enactment of the chicken code has been okay. But that, you know, added a lot of additional tasks to our department. Taking on the zombie homes adds a lot of additional tasks to our department. I believe we took out the line for fire inspections, which I'm just noticing now for some reason isn't in safety inspection. It must be in planning. But I mean, with an additional part-time building inspector, they can take on some of those things, which is probably likely why we subtracted that guy out. And we haven't been able to take that on yet. But so I think that it's if you really look at it, it's not truly too big of a cost increase, but it's definitely something that would be needed. I don't even know what we'd do if we didn't have a backup building inspector and we lost, you know, them.
Yeah, we have two very qualified people.
Yeah, so we have very seasoned, longtime building inspectors. We're lucky in the town to have that. Unfortunately,
So Supervisor, what's the standard call that you get requesting a building inspector? Is it like
There's
did
no
something
such thing as
falling off of a
standard.
house?
I got one this morning from a resident, you know, somebody's clearing stuff on their property,
Oh.
right? They're doing something that, well, maybe they shouldn't be doing, or their property is blighted, the grass is too long, right? I mean,
Could
it's
be anything
endless.
property related. Huh.
yeah, there's no such thing as a standard call.
I didn't mean to answer that for you, Jamie. I'm sorry. Just I had a call this morning about.
I was pulling up my email.
I have to
mean,
speak to you later about.
yes. Oh, yes. And you also call me when you get those calls. So,
I got to keep everybody in the loop.
Well, the boots on the ground, though, is usually the building inspectors. Not only do they interact with the people so people are always a little, I mean, it's always an interesting and difficult thing to go out to somebody on their property and be working with them on either what they're doing that is against code or what their neighbors are potentially doing.
or perceived to
Or
be
perceived
against
to be
the
doing.
code.
It's a tough job, and they're the boots on the ground out there with any call at any time. You know, so
Yeah. It's more of locations I can recall. Calls about homes on Route 7, on St. Joe's. There's a mattress that's been out for 2 weeks. There's, you know, a blighted property. There's mowing that hasn't been done in months. There, you know,
a chemical container on the property line, a stench coming from their neighbor's garage,
yeah,
some animal that isn't a normal animal running around in the backyard.
dangerous trees that are hanging over and are going
Well, those
to
go to the highway department.
ruin my car. Yeah. So,
But it's always something.
I think I got the picture.
okay.
I've said this before, but I think a lot of people working from home has increased the uptick of sort of weirder building calls because they're all looking into their neighbors' backyards or they're just living a little bit closer for longer together. So our next page, do we have any more questions on building?
And not necessarily weirder, just more observant, maybe.
I'm gonna go. For the record, we investigate all of them. They're not always code violations, but we take all of them very seriously. Yeah, so our next page is 13. It is the bottom, 8010, the Zoning Board of Appeals. Zoning Board of Appeals is kind of, I don't know, a portion of the planning. They just get their own line, and most of the equipment and legal notices and personnel is just a carryover from the, the planning and the building side. It's a little bit of a hybrid of both. But I don't think, I mean, it really just stayed the same. We reduced the legal notices a tiny bit and the miscellaneous and contractual a tiny bit. A lot of that is just legally required, though. The zoning board has a lot of legal things that they have to do in noticing their meetings and stuff. So that one didn't change really at all. And then the page 14 is the planning and zoning and also the Conservation Advisory Council. This is showing a decrease, although that's partially because we had the ADA implementation line in the planning and zoning, and I think we correctly moved that over into sidewalks because implementation of ADA is really more of a sidewalk issue than a planning. And I think, again, the most decrease is because we took out the fire inspections. We had a slight increase in consultant services, which we tend to use for planning projects. And yeah, everything else pretty much stayed the same.
There's your fire inspections line.
Yeah, and that's just, and just those adjustments were just purely based on the historical look back over the past 5 years, and that's why those adjustments were made. But substantially, this is what it has been.
Yeah. And then we moved, in 8020 used to have a line labeled CAC EV charging station fees, but I think that was because it was meant to actually be an 8090, and that's the EV charging stations that we installed in our park. They have a annual $3,700 sort of software renewal fee, and then there's an additional $300 budgeted for electricity. I need to get with Nancy. We don't have a basis actually for that estimate. When we originally made it last year, we were going with what the city of Schenectady had for their charging stations. Our charging stations seem to be used quite a bit more. So, but we're also charging for them. So what I am hoping is that this will be completely fine. But I want to see what it looks like to have a reimbursement check come in from one of those charging stations, which we haven't received yet. And like I said, the electric bills have been a little higher because I think the use was higher than anticipated. The reimbursement should also be higher because we're getting reimbursed for the use, but I'm not sure if it'll end up working out to being $300 and we may need to add 100 or 2 more in that line. I just need a little more data to be able to decide on that.
Why is there a delay in the reimbursement for the charging?
So you get reimbursed quarterly, and the stations have only been up for a couple months. So we haven't gotten a quarterly check yet. I don't know if, they're up for 3 months, then, it takes them a little while to process the check, So once they start coming in, I think they'll come in regularly.
Right, and the goal is to offset that.
Is to offset that, but I haven't even seen one, so I have no idea what they look like and how much it's going to be. So I just wanted to put a little star note on that one that, if we get that check in the next week or two and we can kind of have a better estimation of what our use will be for next year, because we've also only had a couple months of use on these, is we might adjust that a little bit. I tried to talk for a really long time because I was allocated an hour.
Well, let's go back. I'm not done. Don't worry. I can use it. Don't tell me that, Laura. Who's going to speak about sidewalks, pedestrian, and safe routes? You going to talk about that?
I think,
'Cause there's
Ray probably has.
substantial increase there. So let's talk about that.
Well, that came from me, so I think I can talk about that if you want.
Okay.
So really,
What page is that?
It's 9.
Yeah, so 54010 sidewalks, pedestrian, safe routes.
It might be the largest increase in the entire budget.
Oh, well, one part is not me. But, like I said, before we had the ADA compliance in the planning and zoning budget line, the 8020, when we adopted the the ADA transition plan, it basically, we had an intern go through and evaluate all of the sidewalks in the town of Niskayuna for their ADA compliance. And this is a requirement because in order to be eligible for federal funding, which the town does use for transportation, and there's a lot coming down with the Build Back Better plan, the town has to have adopted an ADA transition plan. And actually also in order to be able to show that you are moving forward or that you can't just adopt it and then not implement it, you have to work on it. You know, it's a huge undertaking. I think it's not unusual. Like our plan is something like it would cost us to implement the full thing. Like I making up a number, but $30 million, probably even more, who knows. Most towns are like that. And the federal government is not expecting towns to put out $30 million to take care of this all at once, but they are expecting that dollars be spent to rehabilitate public structure to create ADA compliance. So as long as you sort of take that big number and you divide it, even if it's 30 years, and you're spending money regularly on your ADA compliance, you will still be eligible for federal funding and you will still be allowed to show that you're working forward with the ADA transition plan. That's also very helpful in things like lawsuits and things like that. So that's very important. And when Beth was looking at it, she just looked like, I think the intern, Brian Toy, who ended up going to Cornell to earn a planning degree, hopefully inspired by Laura slightly, went in and he put together an estimate for the next 5 years, I think, of projects. And what Beth did was divide it by 5. So that's $89,000 a year.
Okay, so that is, when you say ADA compliance, is that just sidewalks or is that also facilities?
This is just
Just sidewalks. Okay, so that's making, where there might be a curb. Now we have to make that ADA compliant without a curb, correct? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so we have a lot of intersections where the sidewalks dip down. And most of the ADA compliance has to do with, like if there's lips and things that are an impediment to wheelchairs, but also cross slopes and things like that, so that, as you're moving through them, you don't tip over. So I think one of the big main reasons that any town, this is not unusual to Niskayuna, this is every single town that in the East Coast has old infrastructure, sidewalks and things like that. They don't have the right cross slopes. None of them do. So almost all of them have to be redone. But
Okay.
what he did was he identified, pretty much every single one doesn't have the right cross slope. This one also has a lip. This one's cracked. There's, a big section of concrete missing here. So he put that all together and then made a series of recommendations for where the worst sidewalks are, the ones that have the most impediment to ADA, traveling across them, and then all the way to the ones that are the best, which are the newest. So the newest ones are typically built.
So this money here that you're allocating would then be used either by our highway department if they're going to make the necessary repairs, and or an outside contractor to make necessary repairs to these areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're hoping, if we were going to do a sidewalk along Plum Street, that we can use some of this money because we're touching the curb ramps. So once we start touching the existing curb ramps and making them ADA compliant, we can use the money for that type of thing. So.
Okay, so that speaks to the ADA, but then if we go up in that same category, we've got equipment, capital, and outlay at $185,000.
So that actually was one of Ray's requests, and that is for a trackless sidewalk machine to maintain the sidewalks, snow removal and so forth.
Okay, so we'll talk to Ray about
You'll
that
talk
one.
to Ray about that one.
You got off easy, Laura.
Well, I mean, I didn't help at all, but I think that that's the correct place to put the ADA compliance.
Mhm.
The planning department was happy to put together the plan and always happy to help. But it probably should be in sidewalks and safe routes.
And we have Mr. Chapman here, who's very much into safe routes in our town and pretty much heads up that committee, correct? And so in speaking to that, we've also looked for grant money to do some of these things, right? And we're putting some money in our budget to do some of these things.
Well, Laura, what percentage of our budget actually comes from grant money as opposed to tax revenue?
Well, it varies So it varies year by year, but when the planning department does a grant, they're not typically for the planning department. So like, when we did the NYSERDA grant before, we converted all of the lights to LED and got a new boiler, in the town hall. We've done grants like the Aqueduct Park where, we were able to work with the Canal Corps and put in the bathrooms. But I don't know that it really necessarily offsets our budget. Most of it is done through our committees and through, the hard work of myself and my staff to get projects on the ground, but I wouldn't say that they really offset the planning budget. They just kind of help overall, like instead of the town paying,
Well, the money that we spend allows us to get the grants, right? So if we didn't spend the money, we wouldn't be able to get all of these hundreds of $1,000s in grants.
Oh, yes, that's absolutely
Yes.
true. And that's a reason that we do a lot of the things. So the ADA transition plan is kind of a stick, if you're looking at a carrot or a stick, right? Where the federal government said you're not going to get any more federal money if you don't have an ADA transition plan. And by the way, you can't just adopt a plan, you have to start paying on it. So that's their stick. But like NYSERDA uses carrot a lot. So we spend a little bit of money, on staff time and outreach, getting people to try and reduce greenhouse gases with community solar campaign. But then we get a $5,000 rebate, which we can then use to upgrade our parks. Or like we adopted the New York State stretch code and got a $5,000 rebate to be able to host a compost day, which we're going to do next year now.
And this
But-
$89,000 that we're spending for ADA compliance is most likely going to bring more than, or at least a portion of that $89,000 back. And spending that 80 is going to open the door up to getting more grants and more funding for other items. So it's not just an expenditure, right?
Well, it can, but I think it's more of one, it's important in the world to make sure that you're creating infrastructure that all users can use. But two, you would be not eligible to receive the funding. It doesn't automatically open up doors, but it keeps the door from closing. That is a very important door.
And I think it's something we've been working on in order to write the RFP to hire a larger firm to help with the grant writing around water infrastructure and also pedestrian infrastructure.
Definitely.
So it's a important investment into these long-term grant possibilities.
Yeah, and very rarely would they not allow you to use, like if you were applying for a grant and you were able to use your 89,000 that you had leveraged for ADA transition plan, if you're helping and you're touching the ADA transition ramps that you've already inventoried and you're making things better, there's no reason in the world that you couldn't use that as a match on a grant to do something. Certainly you can leverage the funds, but as of right now, we don't have a grant identified to leverage the 89,000, but it doesn't mean that next year we wouldn't have one. And it doesn't mean one isn't coming out now. You certainly could leverage those funds, but kind of regardless, they need to be in there.
Other questions? The last question? Do the figures in this budget adequately support your department for next year?
Yeah, so I think that they do. I really enjoyed working with Beth. I think she's an amazing person, and I feel like there's been kind of a light that's come to town of happiness and everybody working together a little bit better with Beth and Jamie. But and I do think we can move forward. The only thing I don't think is in here is that we've discussed a little bit that I don't really have a number two. I don't really have anybody that can back me up. It's not in here. I know the budget's very tight, but if we have an ability to just have one more conversation about that, I would love it.
So do you want to speak to that now?
I heard Elena say a very similar thing last night. Like, when I go on vacation, I don't really have an ability to say, okay, I have a deputy department head. You're allowed, you're in charge. You can make decisions. You can sign. If something happens, my staff's calling me in Alaska at 6 o'clock in the morning if I'm lucky, saying, can we issue this building permit? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I'm not, I mean, it's a smaller department. So in some ways I understand why we don't have a deputy, but it does get hard sometimes, like I can never really like truly unplug, for more than a couple of days without something happening. So, taking a look at my staff and deciding if there's one that we could make, a formal kind of deputy, I think would be really helpful to me if we have that ability to do that.
But that is not in this budget as of now.
I feel like we're working there. It was certainly an identified need, and I think Beth and Jamie put as much in there as they could. But
I see a slight increase for personal services and planning and zoning, 80/20.
yeah, so because Clark finished taking his test on last Saturday, and I think the idea is to bring him at least to the level of a building inspector. But again, there's really no designation of a deputy, which I know we also struggle a bit with civil service on. So, and I mean, I don't really like to name names. I just think even if, as personnel's change over and everything, it would just be very helpful to have a structure inside that department somehow so that you have somebody like, we have these meetings and Ray and Matt are able to bring deputies. Would be nice.
And just so you kind of know what's going into that. Personal services line, that's all of the planning and zoning board members, and then it's allocated a number of people in that department. The 4 different people are partially allocated there, and then those positions are also allocated across other parts of the department. Like many of our department people, when they wear multiple hats, their salary is allocated against each other. We did build in for particular people who are taking advantage. Oh, yeah, it did. Sorry about that. I'm apparently having a bad effect on all sorts of electronics today. So as I was saying, that personnel line includes all the planning and zoning board members. It also includes 4 staff people from that department who are then allocated across multiple portions of that department. It does reflect the raises for the union personnel that are required contractually. So those are in there as well. And we did leave a little bit of flexibility based on exams being passed and so forth for positional adjustment, but not a lot. We've kept this pretty tight in terms of all our personnel services. And this is across the town. Really, all we did was include the required union raises. Anybody who is non-union did not see a raise for a cost of living allowance. It was just their step or their longevity based on their time. There were no additional raises in this. The one position we did add to this department was that part-time building inspector that we discussed, just to start working on that whole transition. We don't want to suddenly find ourselves with no building inspectors in the town. That would be an absolute disaster. So those are the kinds of things we've built in. And predominantly for the personnel services, it's just been my department working with payroll to see what we needed to adjust those to based on the recommendations of the department head on manning issues.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries.
Thank you. Do we want like a 5 minute? Yeah, can we take 5 for?
Yes, we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm sorry?
The little ones are hard. And I don't know, I get my projects. And we can't, each one really is, each one has a line. Right. Yeah, let's sit down together next week. Because I just really feel like it's.
Who do we have next? Ah, that's a biggie. I'm sorry? I should be for a little bit. Yeah, sure. For the purpose? Oh, please stop. Sure. And, yeah, I don't. Kind of cold.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Moving on to highway and transportation.
Ray Smith, Highway Superintendent of Highway Department, Parks, Buildings and Grounds and Facilities. So over the past many years, we try to pave close to 5 miles a year to maintain a through our roads programs to get us between a 20 and 25 year cycle to get through the town. An average roads lasts about 20 years, some a little more, some a little less. So that's the way the program is set up. This year we paved 2.8 miles of road and 3/4 miles of the big pedestrian walks like here on Knott Street East. One of the reasons that the numbers are down this year is because of the de-escalation clause or escalation clause this year in blacktop asphalt. So on average for paving, we're about $13 to $14 over a ton because of escalation in the cost of oil. For many years, we've enjoyed $5 to $7 to $10 below. So we took advantage of that. That's how our budget works. So, you know, the amount of money that we have in blacktop, we always try to do as much as we can. On average, it's about 5 miles a year. So our ambition is to maintain that, take the good and the bad. So I don't feel as if we're behind by being a little light this year because we did a major project. So Knott Street's about 1.5 times one of our subdivision roads. So although linear feet and adds up to miles, it was a bigger project with more time involved in, you know, the ditching, the prep, and all that stuff. So the only thing in the road process that we subcontract out is the actual paving itself. There's a big savings by the town employees doing all the prep work, all the catch basins, all the keyways, and all that. It is time consuming, but it saves us a lot of money. We get more asphalt on the ground by doing it that way for our residents. So in that, this year, the budget was $484,975 was our budget for the year as far as pavement.
What page are you on, Ray? I'm sorry.
I'm not on that page. That would be permanent improvements. So we'll get to that. I'm just giving you a kind of a breakdown,
Okay.
John, of.
Yeah.
So
I got ya.
out of that 484, $293,871.25 of that was recovered back from the CHIPS program through the state. So, you know, out of that 400, the town essentially gets almost $300,000 back through all the programs. That's submitted every year. Has been done this year. In the last quarter, we did it this year. So we're expecting that money anytime for reimbursement. So the actual town's commitment is we get back money for doing what we do. As far as accomplishments this year, you know, I would say that a lot of people pulled together to find money to do such things as Avon Crest tennis courts. You know, with all your guys' support, with Jamie chasing, you know, what money was available to us, I think it came together rather quick compared to before, you know, from start to finish. I enjoyed sitting down and talking with different department heads about priorities and what needed to be done. And, you know, I think we're doing good things. I think, and I think we were reimbursed for a lot of things that were done just by a little extra work and a little bit of seeking and collaborative effort. I really think we accomplished some good things. Along with the small dark park that was just completed yesterday. So, you know, again, another good project. You know, not
Are
a
the
lot
tennis
of
courts done? Avon tennis courts are done already?
No, not Avon. They're almost done. The
Okay.
fencing went up yesterday.
Wow,
We just need the final coating on the top, and we need to get the lines put on, and you know, we'll be in good shape.
that's great.
So that went rather quickly.
Yeah, for municipal time, that's like lightning
It
speed.
is
It
lightning
is.
speed.
The stars aligned for us. I will say on that we were
We-
grateful to get that done.
We did a lot of work. We had a lot of meetings. We
did.
pushed
We did.
because we didn't want tennis courts locked
Right.
Yeah,
in Niskuna
A lot of phone
due
calls,
to
for sure.
safety reasons. So it was important to get to work together and get it done quickly.
well done.
So I obviously can't outdo Laura's expectations, and I'm not even going to try. She had a good presentation, but I think our goal is to maintain and improve what we have, and just take care of what we have and upgrade where we need to without doing major projects. I think a lot has aged, and I think, you know, paint on a pavilion or steam clean a pavilion, it goes a long way. We have great bones. You know, sidewalks over time need to be replaced. You know, ADA requirements need to be addressed. Things change. So that is my goal, is to maintain and improve what we have. And that's our goal for our department, and maintain services. We constantly look at trying to streamline the way we do things and how we can save money and do them more efficiently. Constantly. We do a lot in-house. We ask a lot of our staff. There's a lot of different expertise in all the people that you hire. Everybody knows a little something about something. And I find you get more by letting them put their ideas out there and work together. And, you know, it's not one person. It's everybody contributes, and you get a good product in the end. So
May I interrupt for just a
I
moment?
don't think so. It's my time.
I'm reclaiming my time. I think you're being a little modest. I want to help you explain some of, I think, what you're just touching upon. But if I could use one phrase, it's get her done. If I ask Ray, I need this, we need this done, he's like, all right, give me a few days to figure out how to get her done. And we had drainage issues at Blatnick Park, at the baseball field, a need, and we needed to stretch $250,000 worth of grant funds. And we needed Avon Crest tennis courts, pickleball courts to be completely redone. And we had to figure out how to stretch those funds. And Ray said, let me work with Matt Yetto and figure out how we can do it in-house and basically save the town $210,000. And that's what he does all the time. The work outside of town hall was estimated to potentially cost $125,000. And he asked members of his staff to take a look and try to create some sort of innovative, cost-efficient strategy. You know, they did it. They're already doing the work They have a plan to fix what has been left unattended to for, I don't know, 8 years maybe.
At least.
And to me, aging building in town hall is a metaphor. To me, that was a metaphor for what was happening in town hall. And the fact that Ray and his team figured out how to fix aging buildings in town hall, aging infrastructure in town hall, and do it in a less expensive way, in a way that can be done in-house. He's constantly doing that and doing it well and doing it in a very timely manner. And you've done a phenomenal job working with other department heads like Matt and Laura to collaborate and come up with innovative solutions that require all what I call the big three: water, sewer, highway, planning, building. It's like these three departments have to work together all the time. And Ray's done a really good job of bringing them all together and helping in a mentorship way as well. So I'm going to toot your horn, because when I've asked you to do things, you've said, okay, I'll figure out how to get her done. And, I've asked you to work with other department heads and collaborate to come up with solutions to complex issues. You've done it, and everyone's been better for it, including my office. So excuse my interruption, but I knew you weren't going to tell it like it was. So I'm going to do that.
Thank you for all that. Sometimes simpler is better. So, okay. You want to start on?
Want to start with 1620?
Yep.
Which is the building, since we're talking about the building.
Page 5, John.
Thank you.
You asked everybody else. I knew it was
I
coming.
need that.
And yours jumps around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think your 2,000 line capital outlay, there's a large amount there. And that was to try to self-fund just what we just talked about. A lot of the sidewalks around the building, the front area here, the steps, but doors, a lot of things that need to be addressed. So we tried to come up with a decent number to try to accomplish all these things. We may be under, by doing what we're trying to do out front and using people that do that type of work within my own department to come up with a concept and I mean, from what I've seen as far as prices right now, I mean, we're saving a tremendous amount. And that's up to you guys, we're going to give you a couple concepts to consider, and it can't always be about cost. It's got to be about longevity. So we're not doing this again. So but I sat down with Beth and we, really evaluated what was right here and what we thought we could do it for, whether we had to hire a contractor or whatever we can do in-house. We try to do a lot in-house to save. So sometimes you got to wait a little longer because we have our seasons with our work, but we always try to get it in. So, and it is big savings.
So this figure here, the 180 is just for this building. Is this for other buildings in the town also?
Predominantly this building.
Predominantly here.
Okay, because as you know, we have some issues at the rec center, senior center building down there. And
So-
you've done some work, you've started some work there, excellent. And just to sort of clarify that we've looked for contractors to try to do some of this work, but we've been unsuccessful in trying to get that done, in a more timely manner. But so when we can't find a contractor to do the work, or find a contractor that we can afford to do the work, then we look at doing it in-house. And that takes longer because it's not like the people in the Highway and Parks Department are standing around with nothing to do. They're very busy doing other things,
I
taking
like
care of
your
the
concept.
taking care of the roads, mowing all the grass in the parks, and taking care of lots of different things. So we do the best they can to get to these other projects when they can. So predominantly, you're thinking that most of that is for this building. I know that, we don't know what the costs are.
We don't. We tried to do I think that's a very healthy number. I think we can accomplish what we need to do here within that.
And this goes back to that, as with everything else, we're seeing, we talked a lot, but we were talking back in July and August on a lot of this. So based on what we were seeing for costs then, I did kind of pad it a little bit, just because the prices for everything have been going up so quickly. I didn't want to, have the project midway and be like, oh, rats, now we're out of money with, things half done. So this was a bit of a generous increase to this line. But I think it is necessary, especially with the costs we've seen on everything for materials and supplies. I didn't want to shortchange it. I feel like it's time to put the investment in so that we don't have a much bigger cost down the road for having neglected it.
So I think we can accomplish what we need to do with these funds. And of course, with every part of it, we'll address it. If we did have to get a price from somebody and we can save a little bit by doing it, we'll do that.
You've always
We
done
did.
it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them are just utilities. Not the next page. We got
I'm not sure the microphone is on. Is it?
83310 traffic. That's 7. 83310 traffic control. So, electricity, capital outlay is 0. It has been for quite some time. Traffic signs are down a little bit. So if you go by what we've spent in the past, that's a pretty good number. The only concern is that the commodities may go up, but we have no idea of knowing what that will be. So as much as we try to get up to speed, prices are like 15 days. So that's your street signs, your signposts, which, are replaced by accidents, bending them up, whatever. We do recover that some in our insurance claims when we have to do them. We file a claim through Janet's office and, so that number is based on past and we've gotten through, but we really don't know what the new prices are. Steel has risen, but I'm sure we can address that if we need to. Or what I'm trying to do right now on most of my lines is stock up on the commodities right now that we know we will need next year. So I'm trying to get what we know we need in stock now because 1, stuff's hard to get. 2, we know everything that we use is we have to go out to bid for this year. We're being told the prices will go up. I mean, we're on the end of a 3-year rollover bid. They've been good enough to keep our prices the same for 3 years. And we definitely know everything's gone up over the last 3 years. So, but they're sending the warning flags that stuff's going up. But we'll do our best here. This is kind of a, you know, if prices were to stay the same, I think we would be fine. A lot of our stuff is price driven. Page 8, highway administration. Little increase in miscellaneous contractual. The phones went down, Janet, right, because of the cell phones that we did away with. So significant savings there. Supplies and materials down a little bit, but still enough to go get by. Trainings and memberships, we really, we keep a little bit in there in case a class comes up that we need to do, but
Now, you did excuse me, you did decrease that. What are we doing about the CDL training, and are we going to have enough funding when we need to do that? I know that we're talking about doing that in-house.
that's across the board, so I don't think that would directly come out of admin of the highway. I think it would be allocated through different parts of this. That's something new, and it's split between 2 departments, so.
Okay, yeah, it'll be between water, sewer, parks, highway.
Yeah.
Spread out.
The personal services part, everything is all contractual or salary schedule driven. Didn't ask for anything more. Next page, page 9, highway garage, 5132. So this is the garage itself. Decreases a little along the lines, but I think those are all generated by actuals and, and to help compensate for, obviously the heating fuel and the propane and the things we need to operate. Nobody really has any control over that.
I do have a question. I see that from 2022 to our 2023, there's a 0 for equipment and capital outlay. Looks like actuals was 5,000, 9,000 the year before. So are we safe having only 0 there?
I didn't ask. This is more, if a furnace goes, air conditioner, something like that. If there was a way to, I get we got to trim the fat. If we could put something in there, it would be greatly appreciated. That's just uncertainty. As of right now, I don't need anything, but if something goes down, do we want to make the adjustment? Do we want to allocate something now? I would be okay with a little buffer in there. That's an air compressor in the shop, or that's what that comes out of there. So, huh? Shoot low, Beth.
That's my job.
You're offering 2. We spent 5 last year. How about a 3?
All right.
How about we go in the middle? Is that feasible? And if I go over, I'll be up to see you.
All right. Yeah, we do it.
You're going to have to give it back someplace else.
I'm sure.
No doubt.
So I
Right.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Ray, earlier this year, you and I had spoken very briefly about at the highway garage, some sort of carport or overhang to protect the few vehicles that are parked outside and extend the life of those. Is there any funding allocated for that?
No. Nothing at all. I think, well, you've been down to our old Butler builder. I think in the future, we need to either look at repairing or making other accommodations. it's a 50s Butler building. It needs a roof. It needs, but I realize this isn't the time to ask for a new addition or a roof. You know, it keeps us warm, keeps us dry, depending on where you stand. But, you know, I think that's something that needs a broader discussion and a plan. So I do appreciate you remembering that. We do spend a lot of time cleaning trucks up, but I think that's a long-term goal. Thank you, though. 5410, sidewalks and pedestrian safe routes. So my part in this is equipment capital outlay, a trackless machine to clean the sidewalks, snow blower, as a replacement for the current one that we have. Well, we actually have two because of the amount of sidewalks that we do, all of the state and county roads, the circle down by Balltown Bridge. So every year we get a little more sidewalks. So in our obligation to do them and do them multiple times. So to be reliable, that's today's price to replace that. And, you know, we have to do these. We're obligated to do the state and county roads per previous agreements and state law, whatever. But, you know, people have to get to the bus stops. You know, handicapped people, ADA, you know, these people need to, some people, that's their only way of transportation. So
So you have two of these pieces of equipment now.
we do. We have an old one becoming less reliable. Put money into it. We would sell one upon this.
And what's the estimated longevity of this piece of equipment?
So I think our oldest one is early 90s. And these have the capabilities. They have different attachments, and we have a broom.
So it is a 20-year, 25-year piece of equipment, could be treated properly, obviously.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, they're taken care of, but you know, they do take some abuse. They do, you know, they're out there banging on them snowbanks. So, but we have in the past, the machine, the cab and the motor and all that has stayed good, and we sometimes have to replace the implements. Sometimes the snow blowers, you know, the bearings are shot or the side panels rot out, whatever. But the machine itself could last.
No, well, the reason I ask about the longevity is because we're having discussions on purchasing things
Yeah.
or bonding things.
Yeah.
So and, you know, if we've got something that's a 3 to 5 year, well, that's not really something you want to bond.
Right now.
Obviously, like your big plow trucks, those
Right.
sort of things. Those are bondable expenditures that, you know, are 30-year pieces of equipment.
Yep. I haven't seen one that lasts 30 yet, but we'll go.
Well, you make them last pretty long. I don't know.
Try to. So that's my part of this, and
Have you got quotes on that piece of
that
equipment?
was a current quote upon when we did our budget workshop with Beth. So that was an updated price. Whether it'll stay there, I don't know. But a lot of these things too is like I've explained in my committee meetings and the previous meetings is, you know, this isn't, hey, you got the money, go pick it up. This could be a year. This could be, you know, we might be able to get it within the calendar year of 2023. It's up in the air. It depends what they make and how many of them are already taken. So, commodity thing. I think Laura spoke of the other parts of that, right? Down to parks. Personal services are just contractual. Seasonal personal services is a lot to do with actuals and how much staffing we've had. Overtime has stayed the same. Equipment, that was for the requested equipment that I put in for 2023.
And so just so you got the list, that was the large mower, it's a zero turn mower, 2 1-ton dump trucks, and a 4x4 with plows. I'm sorry, 2 1-ton dump trucks that are 4x4.
Right.
Plows. Sorry. My own notes are a little-
That's the equipment that we opted not to bond for during this calendar year, correct?
No, this is the request for next year.
Okay.
For this year's.
Mowers, 2 1-ton dump trucks.
Large mower, zero turn mowers, and then 2 large 1-ton dumps with plows.
So let's talk about that for a minute. And the equipment they would be replacing, is this something that we need to do this year? Could be done next year, year after? Tell me about the equipment that you're going to
So
be
the equipment
replacing.
that we're going to replace is mid 2000, 2007, 2008 1-ton dumps that have plowed and sanded their whole life. That's why we need the 4x4 ones. These are upfitted to take care of the parking lots, bike path. You know, we use them year round, but the object that we have to go to the 4-wheel drives with a plower to replace these 2 older units.
And you're getting over 10 years out of these.
Yeah, and they're brittle, to be put nicely.
Yeah,
The
well,
one-
no, again, the reason I ask is the same thing, buying or bonding, right?
So again, you know, we're not necessarily going to get these in a year. So if you push it a following year, you know, you could be 3 years out before these are replaced. So, you know, when I ask for equipment, it's a recommendation based on the use and the reliability of any piece of equipment that the highway has. It's a recommendation. I mean, it's totally up to you, but to be reliable for the services that we provide and to, you know, nothing ever goes down. So, I mean, you're going to replace them one day or another. So that was my recommendation for this equipment.
If we order this year, what's the timeline looking like?
You said 18 to 24 months when we were talking this summer. I don't know if that's gotten better yet.
As of right now, no. But the plants are starting to open up a little bit. But you're still, you know, you're not getting this in a timely fashion. I'm guessing you would be absolutely lucky to get it within the 2023 calendar year. If you did, it would be, you know, November, December, if you got it.
Would have to be paid for in 2023, though, no?
Correct. Right.
If you can.
If
Oh,
it,
the obligation funds.
if approved, and I mean, you know, these are numbers that are off of contracts. Janet has done a great job doing mini bids and saving us a tremendous amount of money on some stuff. Unfortunately, you know, there's not a big selection out there anymore that the mini bids are as effective as they were. So, but everything we can do to save, we try to do. Equipment maintenance up a little bit. That's just the cost of doing business. That's your filters, your oil, your parts. Diesel, of course, up a little bit. Fuel up a little bit. Building maintenance is down a little bit. It's not really building maintenance, it's facility maintenance. So we have done, that was elevated in the year before in regards to some of the reseeding and work that we did at the soccer fields. So that's why that was a little bit elevated from years previous. That one's the same. Telephone down. Miscellaneous contractual, that's up a little bit, and that's because that's where most of our buying is of our commodities. And we anticipate the increase in operational increases.
Well,
So-
speaks of water rents here, because it was 11, then 1,200, 1,500, 7,000, and then we're going to 16,000.
That's based on actuals.
Some of that reflects in the soccer club.
Was it one year we didn't pay $1,200 and we had a lot of rain?
I believe that was a rainy year, but also I think that's when the irrigation was being installed and worked on. So it wasn't being used.
Okay.
I think part of that may reflect the billing cycle as well.
Okay.
If you look at fluctuates it's up and down every other year.
Any questions with that? Highway fund? No, we got yard waste.
Yeah, okay.
Page 15, yard waste. Or no, we got another one, storm sewer, just a small part. We only have miscellaneous highway and storm sewers for emergencies of block it. 8163 yard waste. So
I'm going to speak to this just for a little bit because you'll see that the personal services there, we took a look and we talked to Ray about how those employees are actually used, and we were able to reallocate a portion of their salary against snow removal, which is actually more accurate to reflect how their time is used, so that that money is in a different place in the budget, but it's still there for those employees. But just so you're aware, that's why it looks like there's a decrease, although there is in fact not. It's just been reallocated to reflect that more accurately. We do anticipate some of the fees to go up there for the tipping fees. We've been really fortunate that those have been stayed really low for quite some time. We expect those to increase. And everything else, we tried to keep pretty much where it's been based on the actual, what we're seeing. With that in mind, in order to offset the portion of this that people do elect yard waste removal as opposed to the brush and the leaf pickup that's townwide. So we kind of have to look at them separately. We are recommending a $3 increase in the elected yard waste removal from $55 a year to $58 in order to compensate for the increased costs that we're going to be seeing. So.
Right. And as you said, just to be clear, that's different than the loose leaf
Correct.
and brush pickup.
Although
That's
that all
free.
falls under here, we segregate that in our.
Right.
ordinance.
Right. People think, oh, you're raising the fee for that, but there's no fee associated with that. This is for people that want their yard waste picked up, and it starts very early and lasts.
And I think it's fair to say that even the yard waste fee that is collected to pick the stuff up does not cover the services in which this is, the pickup.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's closer.
It's closer.
It's closer,
We're
but
working to get it closer.
but it doesn't completely cover what it costs to do the service. But we're getting there. Shade trees.
No shade trees, sorry. I don't have the shade. Those.
So our buying power for replacement trees and new plantings have stayed the same. Small increase in miscellaneous contractual because of a lot of the inaccessible trees that we had been dealing with, backyards or just trees that are too big for the equipment that the town currently owns. there are some that we have to hire out services because they have a crane or just can access it better than we can. So a small increase there. Now we can go to the highway fund, I think. $23. General repairs. Once again, I think the 1,000 line was just different allocations, right?
Yes.
Overtime, the same. Patching mix, the same. So pretty much just a small bump in miscellaneous, and like I say, any of the miscellaneouses that have gone up a little bit are just our purchasing expectations of things going up a little bit. Permanent improvements, salary allocation there as well, I think reflects the movement of some stuff that we've identified in contractual.
So that's a substantial difference to personnel services in that line there. So that came from other, you're reallocating.
Up from 570 to 837.
You there?
Yep, I'm here. That reflects actually funding all the vacant positions.
So we've had some dormant positions since, you remember, we did the retirement, the incentive, and that. So some of the positions have only been used per diemly. I've asked Beth, as we move forward and we get fully staffed, to re-implement all of the positions that were basically, people been doing them. We pay them when they do them. So it gives us a good peace of mind of who's qualified to do it and give us our best options when it comes time to fill these.
But the increase there reflects vacant positions that weren't funded previously. Is that?
So that is, I fully funded all the positions,
Okay.
vacant or not vacant, this year. So I know Ray's been trying to hire into a number of them for some time. He's ended up promoting people and whatnot from within, but without really seeing any new hires substantially, with people rotating out. Although we have hired people, we've lost people. So it's to keep the whole staffing options fully funded. This reflects several, two vacant positions being fully funded.
And those two positions were not funded last year?
I can't see that on this
Okay.
spreadsheet. I'd have to look.
So the difference there is $267,000. And if we go back to the yard waste disposal personal services, that went down 140.
That went to a different location.
That did not come into this category. So that's substantial increase. Because, if we look at this line in the past, 483, 461, now we go to a 2021 actual at 663. And now we're going, and if we just even skip over this year, 22, we're going to 837.
This is where me not having history is problematic. I do not know where those numbers previously came from. I took current salaries for those positions and plugged them in, and that's what they are for 7 months in that particular position, and then they get charged 5 months against snow plowing. I cannot speak to how those were calculated previously. I don't know.
But if you bump back all the way back to 21, Bill, it lost some steam last year. It was changed.
Yeah, no, okay, right. So let's go to 663, you know.
Whether something was defunded there or it was in consideration of people leaving through you speaking? Okay.
There we go. Hitting the wrong button. So in 2021, it was underfunded by $145,000. We're going to go over budget this year, probably by, well, this says we're 85% into the year and we're not. So at best guess, I would say we're probably going to go over by at least 25,000 this year in 2022.
From the adopted at 570,
Yes.
you're going to,
Yeah, just to support what Jana's saying, we were looking at actuals, and I don't know why it's been underfunded. I don't have any history of notes for that, but it's been consistently underfunded by a substantial amount. So we're just basing this on the actual positions that are in that department and what the union contract says those positions should be paid, and that's what our projection is based on. There are 2 vacant positions, which if you don't want to fill, we could take those out, but other than that, that's not my decision. You're going to get the boxing glove. All right, never mind. Strike that last. But no, I mean, anything that we've done in the personnel lines, we sat with the payroll department and literally just went through actual payroll with the mandated increases according to the bargaining agreements, and that's what we've put into the budget. So these guys, their salaries, it's only 7 months of these positions. Let me tell you, I can tell you how many bodies that is, and it's a variety of, oh, well, that was not good.
well, even if we use the 663, you're at 174, more. And if you say you're going to go to another 25 this year on your 570, which was
Right,
adopted.
so this is 22 people out of the department. It's a variety of different positions, laborers, working crew leaders, MEOs, both medium and heavy. We've got mechanics. So, I mean, we've got quite a variety of the folks that do all this work. And they are charged 7 months of the year against permanent improvements, which is all the paving work. And the other 5, they get charged against the snow plowing portion of the personnel lines. And that's where the folks that we took from the yard waste collection, we're going to charge them for 2 months against the snow plowing when they're not doing that yard waste work. But they do a lot of between the loose brush and the leaf collection and all that sort of stuff that they're doing outside of that. They do that the majority of the year. And I mean, by the time you add Christmas tree pickup into the winter and whatnot, they really only do help with the plowing for the 2 months worth of that.
Okay, I just want to clarify, Janet. In 2021, the actual, you said was underfunded, but it was the actual is 663.
The actual is 663, but the budget was 518,000.
Okay.
So it has, other than 2020, it has been underfunded. Let's see, all the way back to 2016. Since 2015. It's been under budgeted. We've made transfers in every year other than 2020. And I think that was the COVID issue with COVID.
So the additional
The difference.
expenditure would account for 22 new personnel hires?
No, that's 22 total in that charged against that portion. The allocation might have changed since then. I don't know. That's where my lack of history is sometimes problematic. I don't know if there was a difference in how it was allocated several years ago. I can't see that at this point. So.
But that 837,000 for 2023 was, that's adding all the 22 salaries. That's the number you had.
7 months, 22 people's
Right.
salary, yes.
So regardless of where the previous numbers have come from,
This
that
is
would be,
it.
that would be the actual.
Yes.
Temporary seasonal waivers, I think reflects with a little bit of buffer what we spend. Overtime down a little bit, and I'm sure that's generated by actuals. And allocations obviously goes down when you pull them out. Capital outlay stayed 0. Disposal fees, the same. Membership's the same. So you're gonna see emulsion and calcium chloride. That's a process that we don't always use, depending on what style of road reconstruction we're doing or crack sealing, stuff for the roads. So, we haven't used it in a few years. We did leave enough money in there to buy materials for crack sealing and whatnot. So we're okay with that. Crushed limestone is down a little bit. I think we'll be okay. We have a healthy stockpile of that. Drainage is down a little bit. We should be good there. Hopefully supplies don't go crazy on us for commodities. The other stuff is diesel, sand and gravel stayed the same. Increase in asphalt. I believe that this was funded by what we deducted out of emulsion and calcium chloride. So because we don't always use that line, we left something in there to be able to buy the stuff we need for one process. And Beth and Janet were able to move that down to paving. So in whatever scenario we're given, either if blacktop is up again next year, we can still maintain our threshold. And if asphalt's down next year, we'll be able to pave a little more. So I think that's a win-win either way. Rental of machinery down a little bit. Not a big deal. Miscellaneous contractual up a little bit. And once again, due to commodity purchases for operational needs. Machinery. Salaries contractual, overtime. I'm sure generated by, if you look at the previous ones, by actuals. Equipment and machinery, purchases of stuff, such as we talked to Parks Department, just recommendations and for the same reasons as the first ones.
And just for the list on that, that was 2 one-ton dump trucks, 2 pickup trucks with plows, 1 tilt bed trailer, and 1 6-wheel dump. So it's a variety of different things.
I'm
Again.
sorry, can you read that off to me again?
Yep, 2 one-ton dump trucks,
Yep.
2 pickups with plows, 1 tilt bed trailer, and 1 6-wheel dump.
Okay, so same question as before, Ray, talk about, tell us about what we're replacing, please.
So everything is a replacement. It's not a new category. These are, early 2000 dump trucks we're looking to replace. The pickups with plows are crew leader vehicles. We should be in a pretty good position to recuperate some decent money from the ones that we will sell.
These two trucks, I mean, you
The
talked
two
about the
pickup-
other one being 07, 08, you didn't think that they were,
Dump trucks, right? They're beat up pretty bad. They've been through the body shop and welded and patched and repainted once.
these two that we're replacing here are newer?
Newer, what?
Well, okay, we got two 1-tons, right?
Yeah, they're
Okay,
in the mid 2000s. Yeah,
they're about the same vintage then? Or
yeah, yeah.
maybe
They are
07,
Actually,
08 for the other
Actually,
one?
we have 3 of them that were the same. So all bought that 1 year. So
Mhm.
I asked to replace 2.
And the pickups, you think you'll get some money for those?
I do, and the reason for that being is they're assigned to one person. So they're, when you don't have multiple people driving a vehicle, people treat it as their own. That's why even when we haul stone or haul our commodities, I try to put the operator of their plow truck in their own plow truck to haul stone. You know, instead of putting the guy that never got to drive a new truck in that guy's brand new truck, they just take better care of them when it's their own. So I'm a firm believer in that. So the pickup trucks are, have only had 1 to 2 people drive them in their lifetime. So they're generally taken care of a lot better.
So you will recoup some money. And again, as supervisor said, even if we order these, we don't know when these would become available to us,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
And one of these was a 6-wheel?
That's a big plow truck. So we're getting caught up there. We're going to be in good shape here. You guys have allowed me to buy 1 big plow truck a year since I've been superintendent. You have 9 in the fleet. So you're getting newer. So I think within a year or 2, I think we'll have a fairly new plow fleet where we won't have to make such a big one big purchase. A plow truck's between $2,000 and $3,000 or $200,000 and $300,000 now.
So this is one of the bigger trucks that most
Big
residents
trucks with
would
the
see
plow
going
and
down their
sander,
street.
correct. So you'll have a fairly newer fleet. So you may get, in the next few years, you may get a break from having to spend that and maybe concentrate on some of your smalls.
And so one of the conversations that Ray and I have started having is basically, as we get this fleet to where we'd like to see it, setting up basically a fleet replacement plan so that we have a long-range plan for all the different vehicles. We know what year they bought. We've got a projection of the number of years they normally are functional. So we'll already have planned out, we need to replace, X number of pickups this year and 1 plow truck this year. And so we'll start being able to see that coming up down the road so that we've got a rotational replacement plan so that we're never significantly impacting that line. It ends up being kind of a slow and steady plan. We know what's going to need to be replaced. Obviously, things happen. Sometimes you have to adjust. But just so that he'll be able to say, yeah, I know I need, this is going to be replaced in 3 years from now. This one's going to be 5 years from now. So we can start working that out longer range and just know what we're planning for kind of going down the road.
So it sounds like by making this big purchase now, it'll prevent us from having to do it in the future.
That's the goal.
It'll give us time to plan for future.
It'll give us time to implement a long-term plan.
So it sounds to me, if I were to summarize, we have about $500,000 of equipment to purchase that was under parks. And those items were purchased in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. So these items are like 15 to 18 years old. Meaning they last 15 to 20 years
Right,
with a rebuild at some point.
right.
Lots of maintenance by your staff. And then this is another approximate $500,000 worth of purchases for equipment that is also around the same age.
Correct.
And for all of these purchases, we anticipate it could take 1.5 to 2 years to deliver to the town of Niskuna to be able to use. So by the time we get these items, if we purchase them this year, the items you're currently using, the equipment you're currently using could be now at like 20 years old. Okay. Teacher and me, I like to summarize, right? Didn't that help? That helped? Okay.
Snow removal? You can do the first one. That didn't go well with the
All
last
right,
one.
yeah, no, I'll take that. I'll jump on that grenade. So personal services with snow removal, this is where you see those 22 folks that we had that were 7 months at the permanent improvements. When they're not paving, they're removing snow. So we have 22 of them at the 5 months here, plus we have the yard waste, loose brush, pickup, Christmas tree guys for at least 2 months charged against this as well, because that's about the only amount of time we get out of them that they're not doing some manner of yard waste and tree limbs and all the trimming that they're constantly doing. So that's why you'll see a significant increase in this, is the combination of the other ones. For whatever reason, the salary schedule wasn't correct and was being underfunded for the 22 guys, plus we took the additional 7 at 2 months and added them in here as well. So that explains the significant increase there that you're seeing. Everything else in this section is just based on history and has changed very little.
So where is our other minus? You gave us the minus for yard waste disposal, personal services, 140,000, right?
There is no
Okay.
other minus.
There's no other minus.
That,
So this from
That is because of that.
405 to 691, you're telling me there's no other
that's
offset?
that's like only offset was where we were taking the 2 months of those 7 guys out of the yard waste and moving them against the snow removal. The rest of that increase is based on the fact that those salaries for the 22 positions has not been in the budget correctly for some period of time. That was what Janet read you about the gaps. Those same salaries, they're just allocated 7 months to paving, 5 months to plowing. I don't know why they were in there incorrectly. I have no idea. It's a mystery. We have found this year that a number of salaries across the town were budgeted for incorrectly and quite a bit short. We've been working very hard to make sure that we continue to pay everybody.
All right, maybe we could just get a little recap on that at some point in time. All right, at least from my knowledge, because again, you gave me a minus of 140 and then you told me you're reallocating other places. But when we did some of the other categories, when we looked at actuals versus expenses, I guess we need I'd like a little bit more information on that and how that all is going to flush out.
All right, so you see a small increase in salt, $2,000. I can tell you that we just got our new pricing for salt. That contract's usually up in August. So salt has increased $17 a ton. That's the straight price. There's a de-escalation clause on there as well. So if fuel stays up high, you're probably looking at an increase of $20 a ton.
We're getting on what, probably state contract or
State contract, yep.
Yeah.
So the way the salt, you have to commit to a certain amount of tonnage per year to get that rate. So it's all based upon what you take. Our current rate, what I request is 2,500 ton minimal up to 3,000. So if you go over 3,000, they're going to charge you a whole bigger rate. They need to know because of what they stockpile, and they know where their salt is going now. So that's why you have to give them what range. So
You've been doing this a long time, so you
Yep.
know how to build in a cushion and for a
We-
bad winter if you need it.
Right.
I trust that you know what you're doing.
we know what our capacity is. I always buy salt right before the bid changes. So I'm buying salt in July to fill up my barn for this year's, because it's always going to go up. It never goes down. So that budget is split. You got your winter months on that budget. So, but I always buy salt right before that August bid goes out because we know there's going to be an increase. So if we got room in the barn, we fill it to the doors to get started for the year. So
Yeah.
we do it traditionally every year. Diesel, of course. You want to talk about my great job I did? No? All right.
That's pretty flat through there.
Sand, a slight increase, and that's only because we talked about, we know the prices are gonna go up. So it basically puts us in the same area that we've been, just accommodating for the price increase. Wow, I'm done.
You are. The only other highway expenditure I'd like to pull your attention to is when you move down to the bonds and the bands, the bond anticipation notes, you'll see the amount to pay down on the bond anticipation note jumps dramatically. That is because we are at the point where we have rolled our bond anticipation notes over as many times as we are allowed to do by law. After 5 years, you have to either convert them to long-term debt or pay them off. After conversations with our fiscal advisors this first year, we definitely would rather just pay them off. We're looking at options for the rest of the rolls on whether we can consolidate those and shift those over to long-term debt, or whether we're going to continue paying them off each year. So this reflects things that were bonded for in 2018. That's why that jumps up dramatically. We are paying off a 10-wheel dump with boom mower that was purchased in 2018. We've got to pay the remainder of that off. This year, we have a little bit of it here in highway. You saw a little bit of that up in the general fund as well that we'll talk to at the end of tomorrow, or rather Wednesday. We could come in tomorrow and talk about it, but that's where the rolling of the bands, these short-term debts that we've been accumulating over the years, when the interest rates were really low, and it was to the town's benefit to take those and basically stretch the budget. And roll those. Now we're getting to the point where we can't roll them anymore. We have to start paying them off. But with the interest rates as high as they are, converting those into long-term debt now for pieces of equipment that already are at least 5 years old and won't live the life of the bond, that's going to take a lot of thought and discussion on how we manage that, because we don't want to be paying interest on things well past their useful life. So that's where we're starting to. You'll see right now those bond anticipation note payments are starting to go up in the general and the highway fund. That's why, just so you're aware of that.
Which line is that? Which line?
Bands.
That one.
Yeah, that one.
Anybody got anything?
Last question, Ray. Do the figures in this budget adequately support your department for the next year?
We're in good shape for the shape we're in. How's that? We'll do our best. No, I think we're solid. Like I said, we can't guess the increases for commodities, but I think what's put forth, I think we can continue to provide the services that we've been providing and just be a little diligent. That's all. You know, I think we can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking at it's basically a $1.2 million increase in your budget. It's equipment and some salary. So, you think we need all that equipment this year? Well, we need to purchase it because
We're not going to have it for a year. If we do change it, I mean, I'm willing to sit down and discuss it. Those are my recommendations of, if they get too bad, then I just have to park them on the sidelines. There comes a point in time that they're not worth repairing.
and
So,
if that were to happen, services would be interrupted.
essentially,
And
Yeah.
most of that is snow removal,
snow removal and your construction, yeah, paving.
snow
Or two
removal
bit.
and construction. Just want to put it into like a real world context, right?
They're
If-
necessities.
They're necessities. Because when roads aren't plowed in a timely manner,
We hear about it.
and rightfully so,
to be honest, I'm only trying to get you to the point where in a few years that you don't have to make them big purchases and you can do your long-term goals. You know, the next time around, you may be able to buy a big truck, 15 years down the road from now, you may be able to buy a big truck if you plan it out right. You may be able to buy one every other year rather than every year. These trucks are just old and they're of a make that, we bought a ton of Sterlings back in the day. Sterlings went out of business. So if one, it's very expensive to buy parts for. Two, if you can get them because the company is closed. So, just trying to get to a point where, you can manage it. And that's been more than willing to work with me as far as, a long-term plan. It's kind of, we probably could have done that a long time ago, but
Long-term planning.
Long-term
And
planning.
let's get that
Long-term
5-year,
planning.
let's get it on our. like-
And ideally, we'd like to see this long-term plan and then have a reserve fund set up so that these purchases are planned for and they're funded and there's no surprises or fewer surprises.
And I think if you had an idea of where you needed to be as far as expenditures, down the road where, you have a plan and you say, okay, well, we can do 300,000 a year, pick what you desperately need. To be quite honest with you, my list could be 5 million for what we would like to replace. So I try to give you I try to stay in a range in which it is a necessity.
Any other questions? I always sneak in and ask one after yours.
Good.
Okay.
I don't want to be the last.
Thank
one.
you. Thank
At least
you.
we
We did.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to
Thanks, Roy.
move on to the Assessors Department. All right. We'll take a few moments of a break. Oh, you have to.
Thank you.
Have a good free day. I agree.
Keeping the machinery going. They really do. They do a lot more income. We spend considerable money. I am too, I am comfortable with where it is based on our order. Like, I've never taken.
Everybody back? Are we ready? He is not.
All right, welcome back. We'll move on to the town assessor.
Hi, Eric Amberger, Town Assessor.
Page 3.
Everybody's just gonna kind of talk about what they've done and what they're doing in the next year, and then
What we've done, what we're doing in the next
what you
year.
did over the last, like, kind of what you've done
Okay.
last year, and then what you're doing the next.
Well, we maintain a fair and equitable assessor role. We run the tax rolls, both the town, county, and schools. We have 8,700 parcels that we have to manage across the town and 2 school districts. I forget off the top of my head how many exemptions we have, but there's a lot. We have to manage that as well. The senior citizen, disability, veterans, and STAR exemptions. STAR is one of those exemptions that is constantly changing. Every year, it seems, the state is making changes to it that we have to adjust. They made some of it's administered by the state, some of it by us. So we maintain a lot of records for the town. People do contact us to say, I deal with the different departments in town hall, building and planning quite a bit, controller's office quite a bit as well. And outside entities ask us for information, fire districts, the school districts, some of our community organizations, NCAP. And we try and give them that information on a timely basis. They want to know who lives where. They do their mailings, and we try and get them that. When we have new people move into town, people purchase their homes, we try and give that information to NCAP and other organizations for they can develop welcome packets, which is very good community-oriented stuff. Okay.
Upcoming goals?
Excuse me?
Any upcoming goals you'd like to discuss for your department?
Well, I believe in efficient administration, and we've striven to do that the last several years, and we're going to continue to do that, continue to serve the town. What I do, you don't see, it's not as visible as the highway department moving snow or picking up leaves, but it's very important because this is really the linchpin to make sure that the revenue is collected in a fair and meaningful way. It's not glamorous, but it has to get done.
Would you like to go line by line on your budget?
Sure. Well, personal services, that is what it is.
Now,
Next year,
there's an increase there in his line for that. Is that contractual?
Yes.
Okay.
and next year, there is a possibility of having some staff turnover. I don't exactly know when it's going to happen, but that's something that I'm trying to keep my eye on to see how it impacts the budget.
So you're anticipating someone maybe leaving your office?
Yes,
Okay,
so to retire.
okay.
So.
So that might be hard to find a replacement.
I'm not looking forward to it.
No, I know. We're struggling with that throughout the town.
So that's one bridge I know I'm going to have to cross next year. I don't know when it's going to happen. We've had discussions, but it's still in the conceptual stage.
Well, that's good. And it's good you have those open communications with the people on your staff that are under you, because the more notice that they can give you, the better for you and for the town to try to find someone to fill that position.
Well, thank you. And I try and maintain good relations with my staff just because, number one, it's just the right thing to do.
Yes.
Number two, they work with you on when you have issues, which is nice. I have no equipment in outlay. So for the Board of Assessment and Review, that's gone down $1,000. We've had a lower volume of grievances the last couple of years. For 2020 and 21, I thought it was COVID related. And in 2022, we had fewer people grieving their assessments. So I have fewer sessions, which is nice. And I'm also able to reduce the number of hours at their meeting to hear grievances and still maintain compliance with the real property tax law. So I'm going to try and keep that mean and lean for now. Hopefully we don't get an increase next year, but I don't think it'll do anything to break our budget here. Training and memberships. I did budget for another conference for next year. This one's going to be a little closer, but it's 4 days. I do have a staff member that's going to be leaving, so it's kind of an unknown how much a new person's going to need to be trained and what courses I can get them in with ORPS. Okay, and of course with existing staff members too, I want them to be able to take training courses when they come up. And there's a couple that we'll be looking at right now for the rest of the year. And just how they can do their job better. They do their job better, it's better for everybody. They're happier, the town's happy, we have fewer problems. Supplies and materials, that's a pretty small number there. Certainly not like Ray is talking about. Just as things pop up, if I need equipment, a new laser measure, or things for the office. The telephone and communications is $300 in there. I'm going to be honest, I don't like the idea of carrying two cell phones around. I find one bulky enough, and I've been using my own personal cell phone. I don't use it for work purposes much, but if I'm available, you can call me anytime. So, and if I'm going to send anything work related, it's going to be an email, so it's not going to be like off the charts. Anything can be audited and foiled.
So Eric, you have a town cell phone?
I have a personal cell phone.
You don't have a town cell
I don't have
phone?
a town cell phone.
Okay.
You can call me on it any time.
No, I know. I have called you. I mean, I don't know if I called you on the cell phone or you're off, but you were very easy to get a hold of.
But if I'm going to put anything in writing, it's all going to go through the email. Just it's official documents.
Right.
I want it all out in the open. I believe in efficient administration. I also believe in open administration. The Article 7 is the CERT appraisal and administration. I work with Elena on that. We currently have 11 properties that can realistically come to an Article 7 next year. Probably 3 are going to come to an Article 7, maybe other ones. Two things that do concern me is Walmart keeps stacking up. They're not looking for a court date. I believe Elena is going to try and push that, and they've got, I think, 5 or 6 years in the books now, which is a lot. And something I've also discussed in smaller meetings with General Electric, we had a stipulation with them that ran until the end of 2021. Actually, I take that back. The January 22 bill was the last bill of the stipulation. And we never know if they're going to have a agree with their assessment. And if they do that, it's going to be costly.
So, and that's the funds are in this category for those, because usually we get outside appraisers or outside help with those bigger
Yes.
tax
Yes.
impacts to the town. So Walmart, that was their market, is that right?
Yeah, in Mansion Square.
Yeah, it's been empty for
Yep, they're still
3 years.
paying rent on it. They have it, and it's not being rented out, though. I can't explain that. I don't think they want to have a competitor go in there.
Do they own that property or are they leasing that property?
They're leasing it from Highbridge.
Okay. So Highbridge is getting their money.
Yeah,
Town's getting its money. That's why it's staying empty, I assume, right? It's unfortunate, you know. They do, I mean, it's pretty cleaned up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not a derelict building, but nobody likes to see empty storefronts.
no. And the miscellaneous contractual, that went down $500. That pays for all the things don't fit into the other categories. I do have just in case, if I have to ever order a report, proprietary report, I'm doing a commercial work, I have that option in there. Sometimes that information is not always available, but if someone's going to put together a report, I can pay a couple $100s for it and get credible results. So I have that option. I haven't used it yet, but it's there. And other things too. I think it pays for our legal notices. I don't use a town car because I can't justify the expense of having a car sit in the parking lot for 320 days a year. But I do get reimbursed for my miles and other smaller things go into there.
Eric, is your roll online, the tax roll? Is that online where somebody can look up the tax rolls here in Niskuna?
Yes. Yes, the final assessment roll is online. And plus I have the residential inventory report online. So you can look up and compare your assessment and your inventory against all your neighbors. And I have a sales report online as well. And what's nice about those last two reports, they started their life as an Excel spreadsheet. So I tell everybody, if you want to download it, you can download it, and there's programs out there that convert it from a PDF back to Excel, and you can sort and do anything you want with it. So it's a really good tool. So and it's just important for people who live here and own property here to be able to see what I'm looking at.
Right.
I've
Do
looked,
you feel like it's used much, or do a lot of people end up calling your office anyway to get information?
it's a little bit of both. Unfortunately, I don't have any records of who accesses that. I've never asked Seth for that, but I know people do look at it. And again, if you don't have a computer, come into my office, you see the same thing in paper.
Are there any other questions?
I am. So Eric, do the numbers and the figures in this budget adequately support your department for the next year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So Beth, do you want to offer any concluding remarks for this afternoon? Okay. Looks to me like over the last two sessions, we've really talked about a lot of the capital and equipment purchases we'll need to make for the upcoming year that are in the general and highway fund. And in the next week or so, we'll have to start thinking about, what other courses of actions we may want to take. Currently, in the budget, these items are, they're in the budget and they're being paid for. And we're not bonding in this current budget. But moving forward, we have to discuss those courses of action that you recommended.
Okay, yeah, as long as we're sort of having a general discussion. In the budget you have presented now, you have included the contractual increases for the represented groups in the
Yeah.
town, correct?
Yeah, we've
Okay.
honored all the union agreements,
Okay.
correct?
And has there been any monies allocated to unrepresented classes? of
There has been no cost of
employees?
living adjustment for anybody who's non-represented.
None of that, okay. So I guess for myself, possibly you could work up a little something on that.
Okay,
I mean, we have quite a few non-represented employees in the town. So that usually gets to be a discussion that we have toward the end of budgeting. So I'll give you a little notice that I think you should try to work on something there.
okay, we
'Cause
can do that.
that's something we should look at, and we usually always do.
Yes, because I think, last night we did discuss the legal department, and there was a raise in that department.
Right. So, right, we'd want to know that. So to your point, something has been figured in for that particular department. If there's
Right.
any others, we would, I would want to know that. And then for the other non-representative employees.
Based on the document that you had emailed last week, along with the budget, I think maybe there was also a slight increase in community programs.
So some
But-
people get steps.
Right, so that's where, even though there's not a cost of living adjustment based on their time in service to the town, they may be moving up a step or have an increase in longevity. So that's where you'll see some of those increases. So there may be increases for certain, say, department heads, but that's just purely based on the current salary schedule and their time in that position. But there hasn't been any additional, so even with all the union positions, right, they move up steps and longevity as they are time-based, but then they additionally have, most of them are roughly 2.5% contractual obligations on top of that are coming into effect each year. So for the non-represented, we did not do any type of a percentage cost of living allowance. So the only increases you're seeing, with the exception of the town attorney, was the increases that were based on steps or
Steps.
longevity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.